All right, this story is kind of the quintessential resurrection story. It has all the dynamics of the discovery of the empty tomb and then of Mary and the appearance to Mary. It's a combination of the urgency of this and also then the intimacy of relationship with Jesus. It's just a wonderful story. Now, in terms of learning it, there are two parts to the story. The first part is, the discovery of the tomb being empty. Simon Peter and the other disciple running out to the tomb and going into the tomb and so on. And then the appearance to Mary Magdalene, and and then her going to the disciples. But that's all part of the same thing. So there are two parts essentially, and so the episodes of the first section, there are 5 episodes, 2 sentences each, and then the second section, the appearance to Mary, also has 5 episodes, with then the ending episode of her going and announcing it to the disciples. So you think the structure of that story. You think the structure of the episodes. Now the verbal threads. The first is, we don't know where they've laid him. So Mary says that to the disciples, and then she says it again at the beginning of her response to the angels. I don't know where they've laid him. And so also then with the gardener, tell me where you have laid him, and I'll take care of him. I'll take him away. So that verbal thread then links the two parts of the story together. Another verbal thread is the linen wrappings lying there. It's the beginning of the 2 episodes of first the other disciple, bending down and looking in, and then of Simon Peter and what he saw, the linen wrappings lying there. Another verbal thread is, woman, why are you weeping? So the angels say that to her. Jesus says that to her. And those are the first words from both of them. So that's a link that is very helpful in relation to those 2 episodes. And finally then, in Jesus' statement to her, I have not yet ascended to the Father, but I am ascending to my Father and your Father. So that's a verbal thread that links that part of that episode together. The dynamics of this story. The first part of the story, the section of the discovery of the tomb, is about her horror at discovering that the tomb is empty, and her assumption that someone has taken his body. The disciples then running out to the tomb, and the episodes then of the other disciple going in first, or of his looking in first, and then Simon Peter going right in, and of seeing it through their eyes. So you first see the linen wrappings through the eyes of the other disciple, and then through Simon Peter's eyes, the linen wrappings lying there, the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. That has that sense of an inside view. And so you want to communicate that intimacy, that discovery, that sense of looking around and seeing what is there and an amazement at that. The final narrative comment that concludes this section, for as yet they didn't understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead, is very enigmatic. finally, we don't know what that refers to. Whether it means that they only believed Mary Magdalene, that the tomb was empty, or whether they believed that Jesus had been raised. But if it means that he hadn't been raised, why then does the narrator comment they didn't understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead? So it may refer to that they didn't understand the scripture, but that they believed that he had raised from the dead, or it may mean that they weren't sure what had happened because they didn't yet understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. And their going to their homes also is puzzling. If they believed that he had been raised from the dead, they would do as Mary did after the appearance and run and tell the others. So the ending of this first part of the story is ambiguous. And so to leave it ambiguous is just fine, because that's what the story does. The second part of the story is the transformation of Mary Magdalene's grief into joy. And the whole story is essentially told from her point of view. So the first part of the episode is then to get the listeners to identify with Mary Magdalene in her weeping and of what she saw. So there's a high degree of identification created with her weeping and then of seeing the angels, through her eyes. The delight of this story is the direct communication to the audience that Jesus is standing there, but Mary Magdalene doesn't know it, and of watching her discover it, and the delight and joy in that. So the audience knows, and that's what you want to communicate as a kind of inside information to the audience. It was Jesus standing there, but she didn't know it was Jesus. And then of her discovery. Now, a central dynamic of this story is the voice of Jesus. First of all, of his warmth and affection and saying, "Woman, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for?" And it's important to make a difference between the angels who ask this question somewhat more objectively, "Why are you weeping?" and Jesus, who asks it with greater warmth, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" And then his word to her, Mary, which is an invitation to recognize who he is. And it's also affectionate and warm and, all that stuff. You'll decide how to tell that. Jesus' word to her, "Don't hold on to me," implies that she is holding him and that she needs to let him go. And the reason that is given then is in relation to the ascension. I think it's important that be also something that has some energy to it about the ascension, that it isn't just another one of Jesus' kind of theological statements, which also often happens in the interpretation of John, is that Jesus' words are kind of disembodied. I think that's not right. And then the final episode, of course, is Mary Magdalene's, amazement and going and telling the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and that he said these things to her. Now, this is a distinctive translation that I've done. That is a more literal rendering of the Greek than is present in the translations. And And I think it's because they don't understand the primary dynamic of this ending, which is her amazement that he had said these things to her. And it's a storytelling ending that then, communicates, her delight, but it's in how you tell it, so that it's all in the expression of, in this indirect discourse of her delight and wonder that he had said these things to her. And it is, in the context, truly amazing, because things like this are always said to men. And so it is amazing that he had said these things to a woman, and that he had said these things to Mary Magdalene.